I'm Michael Pennington. I'm the director of the Theory Center at the Jefferson Laboratory in Virginia, which is a US national accelerator facility for studying nuclear physics. In the 100 years since Rutherford discovered the nucleus, the fact that there was a nucleus at the heart of every atom, we've realized that there are not only protons and neutrons inside the nucleus, but countless other particles, pions, kaons, sigmas, lambdas, lots of other things that we know are not fundamental. And 45 years ago, there were indications that these could be understood as being made up of quarks. And then 40 years ago, it was realized from experiments on something called deep inelastic scattering, which were the first experiments to sort of look inside protons, that these quarks had some property that protons and neutrons don't have, which we call color. And so the idea is to understand the nature of the color force, how quarks are bound together by gluons to make protons and neutrons and all of nuclear matter. And what Jefferson Lab attempts to do, and will be attempting to do, is to study not the deep structure of matter, which is left to the LHC or whatever, but is that transition between how protons and neutrons, when you just open the can and you look inside and see that there are these colored objects in there, what the world looks like and what is the distribution of quarks and gluons inside a proton, so that we can understand essentially the internal landscape of hadrons, of strongly interacting particles, and how that shapes not only the nuclear physics but also astrophysics and also eventually life on Earth.
I'm Raymond Snellings, and I'm based at the University of Utrecht, where I'm a professor in physics, and I'm teaching nuclear physics and heavy ion physics, and that's also where I work in. So I'm working on RIC and the LHC experiments. One of the main things which we were looking at is how matter really behaves when it's compressed to extreme densities and very high temperatures. And we did that at lower energies, at RIC, and almost half a year ago we had the first collisions of heavy nuclei at the LHC. And there we created this matter, this very hot and dense matter, which reaches these temperatures which never have been reached before in the laboratory. And that matter is what we're studying right now. And we're trying to really extract what the properties are and try to see what that means for the early universe, how that expanded, and how the matter behaved at that time.
My name's Kim Lister. I come from Argonne National Laboratory in Chicago, just outside Chicago. From the time of Rutherford, there's been the concept that you can actually describe nuclei in terms of the forces that exist in nature. But in fact, nuclei are so complicated. Until we recently had very big computers, it was very hard to really do that. So we had to make up toy models of how nuclei work, because the truth was so difficult. But now, because of big computational power, we can actually do that. And so now we try and make real computations of how nuclei really work, and then do very precise experiments to test these models. So we're sort of getting closer to the truth. Where I work at Argonne, I'm lucky because we have a theory group who do these very complicated calculations, and I'm an experimenter, so I make measurements. So the sort of sequence of events is I sit and talk to them and say, what is the most important thing to measure? And they'll tell me something impossible, and then I try and think of an experiment to measure what really tests what they can calculate.
I'm Takashi Nakamura from Tokyo Institute of Technology, Tokyo, Japan. And I'm working with for the radioactive nuclear physics, radioactive nuclear beam physics. So finding a new exotic phenomena. It's about the Coulomb breakup. One of the useful probes for this exotic nuclei called HALO, which is actually a kind of nucleus made of very densely packed core surrounded by extended neutron distribution, which is very large, which has a very large size. And we have found newly the new HALO system in carbon-22. You know, usually carbon is like carbon-12 or 13, but we have 10 neutrons more than usual. Or also we have found a new HALO system in neon-31. You know, the usual neon is like neon-20 or 22. So we have added about 10 neutrons more. Then we have found a very exotic structure where 1 or 2 neutrons are very far outside of the densely packed core.
Well, I'm Endlich Shots. I'm from Michigan State University. I work at the National Superconducting Cyclotron Laboratory doing nuclear astrophysics experiments. I'll talk about explosive hydrogen burning in the cosmos. So that's basically a kind of exotic mode of hydrogen burning that happens on the surface of neutron stars. And what we do in the laboratory is we actually recreate the same reactions that power these explosions on the surface of neutron stars. And we try to understand the observations based on the nuclear data that we measure in the laboratory. Then you also try to learn about neutron stars, and we know very little about neutron stars. They're basically big blobs of nuclear matter, and it's not known what exactly the properties are of nuclear matter. For example, the mass and radius relationship of a neutron star. And that's something you can extract from these explosions, hopefully, once you understood them reasonably well.